Hey there, Derek Rydall here, founder of the Law of Emergence and author of the best-selling book Emergence and the Abundance Project. And I want to talk today about a very important principle for developing self-mastery and developing a really healthy, resilient way of living. And right now we're in the midst of a global pandemic and a global financial crisis. And really some would say one of the most, if not the most difficult and confounding and confusing and troubling moments in modern history. And I want you to understand this not just from the context of today, but now and into the future and whenever you're listening to this. And it's this principle of why we must live every day as if it's both a tragedy and a triumph. And it's all about expanding our perspective and our perception. Because right now, there is a lot of people struggling, a lot of people suffering, and more and more people dying from the coronavirus. And it's a tragedy in many, many ways. The loss of jobs, the loss of life, the struggle with families, and all manner of challenges. And so there's no doubt and there's no diminishing of the fact that this is a tragedy. It's a global tragedy. It's a global crisis. And however, at the very same time right now, as I wrote about in an article recently, A Breath of Fresh Air, Is the Pandemic a Miracle? There's also more lives that are being saved than are dying, more breakthroughs and innovation that will lead to future progress and abundance than we're currently losing. The planet itself is getting a breath of fresh air. Lakes are cleaning, streams are clearing up, fish are returning, dolphins are in the canals in Italy, the air is clearer over China, literally habitats are healing. And as I talked about in that article, 1.3 million people die a year in traffic accidents. 200 to 400,000 people die a year from medical error. Many of them won't die. Some will die in hospitals, but a lot of them that would have been in there for other procedures won't die. A lot of those 1.3 million people in traffic accidents won't die. Also as a result of this global shift in millions and even billions of people moving to virtual living and virtual telecommuting, business and education, a lot of those people will stay home. In other words, businesses will readapt, educational institutions will readapt, and millions of people will begin to work more from home and learn more from home, meaning still less people on the roads potentially, meaning less people dying. Hundreds of millions or billions of metric tons of CO2 are poured into the air through pollution. Right now, as the earth is getting a breath of fresh air because there's not as many cars or planes or factories, then actually what's happening is the deaths by pollution, the disease by pollution is less. Millions of people die from contagious disease every year. Because of the quarantine, many of those people won't die. So right now, simultaneously, there's what we would call tragedy, and there is profound victory and triumph, and people's lives that are saved, and people's lives that will not be destroyed, and all the car accidents and all the rapes and the violent crimes and all the things that would have happened with people being on the streets and being in dark parks and being in bars and on college campuses. That's not going to happen now for a while. And to some extent, perhaps never again to that level. So the key here is not just that that's magnificent to think about right now, that there's a tragedy going on, and the only difference is where our perception is focused. That right now, because of media and because of the novelty of this virus, it is literally called the novel coronavirus because it's new, we're suddenly in shock and we're suddenly focused very acutely on one dimension. And it has caused us to do a lot of things and close down the world and all of that. And I'm not saying that's not a good idea. I don't know if it's a good idea. Nobody really knows for sure. And you could say, well, lots of people will die if they don't. Lots of people are dying anyways. And that's what I want to talk about is what we have an opportunity to practice right now when we experience tragedy is to let our heart break for humanity. That's the opportunity of suffering and tragedy, is to break down the armor and the calcification and the separation, that our heart can crack open and increase its capacity for love and compassion. That's the gift of tragedy. Every condition comes to serve us. We don't always like it. It doesn't always come in a package that we think is beautiful. But just like in nature, everything comes for our own evolution. Every condition. There is no such thing as a condition that is not ultimately for our evolution. Even what we may call death, and that's a much deeper conversation. But the tragedy is to crack our heart open, our heart to break for humanity, for us to realize we're not separate, for us to realize we're in this together, and we always have been. And so there's all kinds of benefits and gifts and values in our heart cracking open and our heart increasing its capacity to love and to be vulnerable and to be humble and to realize we're not in control. That's the gift of suffering. It's why the Dalai Lama said many years ago, I wish for America more suffering. He wasn't being pessimistic or malicious or mean. He meant there was a maturing and a ripening that takes place. Right now, what's being happening in the Western countries with the suffering and the sickness and the breakdown in the economy and people afraid of getting food and all that, guess what? That's happening all over the world all the time. It's just that we're experiencing it now. There are people that not too long ago were literally waiting in line for bread. There are people, millions of people starving. And we're just now experiencing what it's like to go to the supermarket and the shelves are empty. And again, I'm not saying that's not hard, and I'm not saying to diminish your fear and your struggle because it's new to you and it's scary. But it's important to know this because when this crisis is over, there is as much tragedy going on the planet as there is right now. And the key is, when this crisis is over, we need to keep this perspective. We need to keep our minds open and our hearts open so that our hearts continue to break for humanity. Because there are people dying, there are people suffering, there are people starving. And we don't want to go back into a numb bubble where we think now just because Amazon is delivering on time and there's plenty of toilet paper and pasta on the shelves and our stock portfolio is up, that everything's fine. Everything is not fine for a lot of people and for a lot of the planet. And this has been true. Before the pandemic, there was as much suffering going on the planet as there is now. After the pandemic, there will be as much suffering going on. Maybe a little less, hopefully a little less, because we've changed. Before the pandemic, there was as much triumph and goodness going on. During the pandemic, there's as much triumph and goodness going on. After the pandemic, there's as much triumph and goodness going on. The path of mastery, the path of mastering yourself and mastering your life and having the level of resilience and fortitude and soul stamina and real wisdom and maturity so that you can truly ripen your potential and be a true leader or a lover or an artist or a creator of whatever area, is about learning how to hold the polarities. That it's never an either or. It's never a tragedy or a triumph. They always live together. It's never that you want to be just a selfless person. If all you do is try to be selfless, you will destroy yourself. You must be equally selfish. Try to breathe out all day and that's all you do. You die. Try to only breathe in all day and be selfless, or selfish rather. You die. Right? Try to avoid the emotional challenges in your life, and your emotional immune system and structure will be so fragile that the slightest little annoyance is going to take you down. Now, some of you are like, hey, he's talking to me, right? Try to not strain your mind about concepts and ideas that are painful and make you feel stupid. If you don't do that and all you do is do what's easy, you will struggle tremendously when a real problem shows up. The path of mastery is the understanding that the light and the dark are always happening together. As it says in the Bible, the darkness and the light are both alike to thee. The light and the dark are always happening. The dark, dank soil of earth, which is literally death and decay, is in partnership with the sun. Okay? And so there's not, the seed doesn't avoid the dirt and get rid of all the dirt and go, I'm triumphant, yay, all it is no more dirt, it's just sunshine, because then the sun will come out and burn that seed to a crisp. It buries itself in the dirt, it digs its roots deep into the darkness, into the decay, and then the light hits that and activates the potential. And if you go around and just try to be a good person or a selfless person, like I said, you're going to gasp for breath, you're going to be resentful, you're going to burn out. Likewise, if you just are selfish, you're going to ultimately stagnate. If you go around just giving, but not receiving, it's not going to work. A circuit has the positive and negative polarity. Try to plug in a battery and only use the positive side. You'll get no energy. Try to wire your circuits in your house and only use the positive side. You'll get no electricity. You must have both polarities simultaneously connected, and then you have a circuit. And when you have a circuit, you have circulation. And where there's more circulation, there's more life, there's more power, there's more growth, there's more green. And wherever the circulation has been broken, it's because the circuit has been broken, it's because the polarities have been polarized instead of connected. If all you focus is on tragedy, you're going to suffer. If all you focus is on triumph, you will lack resilience. You see? So right now, we are getting the opportunity to wake up. There's a great awakening, and to realize and to have an experience, just like 9/11 for a lot of the Western world. People like in Israel and other war-torn countries were like, they had compassion, but they're like, guys, we live with this every day. We have terrorists at our walls every day. I'm really sorry this is happening to you, but like we go through this every day. And you're acting like, oh my God, and you shut the whole world down and you spend trillions of dollars and we go crazy for a while, right? But terrorism and poverty and hunger and disease and death and tragedy and people struggling for work, it's going on every day, everywhere. It just may not have been going on for you. So this is giving us a time to expand our heart, to let our heart break for humanity. And don't get stuck there. Research and begin to look for how this is also one of the most triumphant times, not just in potential, but actually, as I said, read my article, A Breath of Fresh Air, posted on Facebook, Is the Pandemic a Miracle? And let it expand the aperture of your awareness to see all the benefits. You know, some of your worst experiences are what led to some of your best results long term. Some of your best experience are what led to some of your worst results long term. It's like the Zen parable about the Zen farmer. I don't know if it's a Zen parable, but it was Zen farmer, but and he has a son, and the son is out trying to deal with the horses, and they have a few horses, and the horses get out and they run away, and he loses all of his horses. And the neighbor says to the farmer, gosh, doesn't say gosh probably, but he says, clearly you have been cursed by the gods or something like that. And the Zen farmer says, maybe so, maybe not. And a few days later, those few horses come riding back to the stables, but now dozens of wild horses are following them. So now they have dozens of horses. And the neighbor says, it's the nosy neighbor, says to the Zen farmer, clearly you are blessed by the gods. And the farmer says, maybe so, maybe not. And then a couple days later, the young son is breaking those horses and training them, and he gets trampled by them, and he gets his leg very badly broken, and he can't walk right now. And the neighbor says, clearly you have been cursed by the gods. And the Zen farmer says, maybe so, maybe not. And then war breaks out on the front lines, and all the young men are scooped up and sent off to the front lines, and the boy, doesn't go, and because of his broken leg, and as you can guess, none of those men return home. They all die. And so the neighbor says, clearly you are blessed by the gods. And the Zen farmer says, repeat after me, maybe so, maybe not. The point is, he never let himself get stuck in judging good and bad, tragedy and triumph. He never because he knew how to hold both. He was available to the circulation of life, to the circuit of life, and not attached to hold on to the good, get rid of the bad, be afraid of the bad, pursue the good. This is why Buddha also said that the fundamental teaching of Buddha wasn't just that desire is the root of all suffering, but that is craving and aversion, which means the craving after what we think is good and the aversion to what we think is bad. That really makes up the false sense of self that keeps us on a treadmill, always trying to push away the bad and attract the good, trying to add something to us or get rid of something. And no matter how much you add or get rid of, you never have enough and you never are enough, right? So we need to learn to hold both polarities without attachment. We can celebrate the triumphant and let the tragic break our hearts and crumble our ego and let us be more open and pliable, flexible and humble and resilient. But what we're really doing is expanding our awareness to see that really all of life is happening now. And the more we can do that, we now have more choice, true free will. Free will is a function of expanded awareness. Real choice is when our awareness is expanded instead of us collapsing around one singular polarity. So right now, we're getting a chance to practice. Always we get to practice. And if you're willing to do that practice and let your heart break, don't put your head in the sand or your head in the clouds. Let your heart break. Feel your feelings fully. There's grief, there's sadness, there's fear. Don't indulge in them, but feel them. Let your heart break for the people that are struggling. Let it break for yourself. And that begins to allow your emotional circuitry to come more alive. And then put your attention on all the good that's occurring, on all the lives that are being saved, on all the insights and innovations and inventions and progress that is being made now and will be in the future, and how the world is united. And then celebrate. And now you're literally like a piano player working the scales of your instrument. And you're building so much resilience. You're building wisdom. You're building stamina. You're expanding your awareness and your ability to see what's really going on. It's 2020 right now. It's the year to finally see clearly. 2020 vision, where the things that were hidden are now being revealed, both within us and outside of us. But in order for us to see, we have to be willing to hold both sides, both polarities. And then on the other side of this, you will have so much more strength. Your coil will have so much more wattage and capacity to carry energy and compassion, love and forgiveness, wisdom and intelligence. You'll be on fire with creativity. I'm telling you. We are living through perhaps the greatest time in human history, the most important time. And those that are willing to do this work will be the lights and will be the new leaders. It is the times like this that heroes are born, that the leaders are made, and that the foundations are laid for future fortunes and for real evolution. I'm inviting you into that. You're being called now. Answer the call. Don't put it on hold. Don't let it go to voicemail where the universe gets the message mailbox full. Answer the call. Take this opportunity to just develop yourself more, to develop your heart and your character. Let your heart break for humanity and let your heart soar for the triumphs that we are experiencing and that we will. And you will have a heart that is as big as the world. You will develop the heart of God itself. I hope this serves you. Comment below. Share this with your loved ones. Let's continue to make love go viral. And until next time, live authentically, love unconditionally and fiercely, and follow your destiny.